What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm Zach with my two co-hosts, Josh and Mike. Today, we're going to be going over the last week of March Madness, both men's and women's a little bit, and then we're going to go into our much-awaited NFC and AFC North division recaps. Josh, you want to get us started with some March Madness recap?
I will. We'll start off in the East region, Sweet 16. UConn destroys San Diego State, a team that has just had a whirlwind of a tournament, kind of weird first round, dominated the second round, and then got killed in the third round. Illinois goes on to beat Iowa State in a pretty close game throughout. Illinois was in pretty much control. Their offense was just too hot, and they were able to win a game like this, which was at the time important to. I feel weird recapping these games when we've already seen the next round and what happens to these teams and their fate. But had we recorded in between the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, I would have said that was crazy for Illinois to win a game like that against a great defensive team. It shows that they can maybe go beat UConn. As we know, that did not happen at all. UConn blows out Illinois. Illinois was really hot leading up to this game through the Big Ten tournament, and then early on in this NCAA tournament. But UConn is just another beast. They went on a 30-0 run in this game, which is just absurd. I believe it was from 23-23 to 53-23, which is just crazy. I've been just thinking about this UConn team as just we continue to watch them. And if they continue this dominance and just have two natties, 12 straight NCAA tournament wins by 13 plus, average margin of should be in the 20s, I guess, unless they win by like 13 exactly in those games. But this would be up there with one of the best runs of all time. It would pass up Florida for me for sure, which is the most recent two-peat. Because I mean, we looked at last year with UConn as that might be one of the most dominant tournament runs we've ever seen, and if they can go repeat that two tournaments in a row, just says a lot about Danny Hurley and this team is just they're really really good.
I completely agree. The one thing to take away is how dominant they've been, winning by 30 and then 25, and the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight is not an easy thing to do. And the fact that Illinois was squeaking past an Iowa State team that, like you mentioned in previous episodes, Josh and Mike, both of you, that they're really solid defensively. It just goes to show how dominant UConn has been. I don't have too much to say other than that. Like you said, covering teams before and after we've seen what happens, it's vastly different. So, but yeah, UConn, I mean, I saw this one thing on Twitter saying the last two times the men's and women's bracket have been won by the same college was in 2004 by UConn and 2014 by UConn. It's 2024, year ends in a four. Both the men's and women's UConn basketball team are both dominating at what seems like a lot of levels. So I think I might just give away a little bit of a prediction. Maybe they go and win the whole thing.
Yeah, or maybe NC State does it and they become the
Hey, they
next
might.
two women's and men's winners. But yeah, UConn versus San Diego State. San Diego State was in the game early. They It was a championship rematch from last year. You thought maybe they had a chance, but UConn was just too good. Absolutely dominated the second half, and it wasn't close. Illinois, Iowa State. Illinois tried their hardest to kind of lose this game. They played great defensively, but 15 for 29 at the free throw line, only 51%. You're not going to win many games doing that. They were able to shoot 30% from three when Iowa State shot 46%, and they still found a way to win. You thought maybe they had a chance going into the UConn game. They looked very good in the first half. They gave up a little 5-0 run to end the half, and then Brad Underwood says they just need to keep attacking the rim no matter what. So they decided to keep doing that, and in the end, they gave up a 30-0 run, and the game just was not close. They only shot 26% from three. I mean, UConn only hit three threes, and they still were just dominated this game. They beat you at every level. They're just too good. I was at a wedding during this game, and you check your phone, and it's 23-23, and you think, oh, it's going to be a close game. Illinois has a chance, and then you look in 20 minutes, and they're down by 30 points. Which is so impressive by UConn. They are just that good.
Yeah, and you guys alluded to the UConn success in women's basketball as well. I wanted to take a quick second to go over how, like, everybody knows how dominant UConn's been in women's basketball over the past 2 decades, but just their achievements, I feel like, are not looked at as maybe like the best athletic program in all of college sports. They win in their first one, I think, as a pro. Yeah, their first one as a program and the first one for Gino Auriemma was in 1994-95 season. Went 35-0, won it all. Won it again in 99 at 36-1. Won it three in a row from 2001 to 2004, 39-0, 37-1, 31-4. Dominant seasons. Then go on another two-peat in 08-09 and 09 to 2010. going 39-0 in both of those seasons, which is crazy. And then there came their four-peat from 2012 to 2016, 35-4, 40-0, 38-1, 38-0, 38-1. Oh, man. And yeah, that was that was their last national championship was in 2015, 2016. But having a three-peat, a two-peat, and a four-peat from the same coach in the same couple eras is just absolutely insane. They won team of the decade in 2000 and 2009 for a reason. And I just feel like it doesn't get talked about how great they are as a program.
Yeah, no, they are just that good. Gino Auriemma's that good. They've had great players, and now they have another one in Paige Buchers. They're trying to keep their success going here. Auriemma hasn't had as much success in recent years, but they have Buchers finally fully healthy, and they have a chance to go win another one.
Yep. Yeah, that would be insane for his legacy just to get back on it after what is it, like 7, 8 years since they won their last one. But moving on here to the men's West region, Sweet 16, RJ Davis and Caleb Love just go ice cold. RJ Davis, I believe, was like 0 for 9 from three or something. Bama gets super hot late in that game against UNC. UNC had control despite RJ Davis not playing well for a lot of this game. They led by bit. I think it was like 8 at half or 7 at half. It was a decent halftime lead. They led late in the game as well, and they still just couldn't get it done. I just couldn't understand for the life of me why Baycott was sitting with 3 fouls. Like I get being cautious with only 5 fouls, but sitting a guy with your best player or in that game, your best player with 3 fouls, who was a big part of keeping them in this game and keeping them leading for a while. Just didn't make any sense to me to sit him with 3 fouls for so long. In the other game, Caleb Love goes RJ Davis cold. Like I said, he can't buy a bucket. Clemson had an extremely scrappy run to the Elite Eight. Another situation here where their fate we know, but they had an extremely great run to get to the Elite Eight here. Just a scrappy team, well-rounded team. And that just shows that as even though we have these teams in the country that are like Alabama, who's great on one end and is not good on the other end. You can have teams like Clemson who are not insane on offense or insane on defense, but you can make a run if you're well rounded. In the Elite Eight here in the West, Bama versus Clemson. Bama hits 16 threes, beats an inferior Clemson team. Bama's offense can beat literally anyone. They just need to go nuclear every game, which is a lot to ask, but it was good for me to see them play against a UNC team who's better defensively than they've been in the past couple of years, since they made the Final Four, or sorry, made the national championship a couple of years ago. But Bama was able to win a game like that against them, and they could win a game where they go and hit 16 threes. Like, if they go and hit 16 threes against UConn, who, spoiler alert for me too, I do have them winning it all. If they can go hit 16 to 23s against UConn, I mean, it's tough for any team to really beat that. But they I would put the number for them at 90. I think they need to get 90 against UConn at least, and I think they need to get 90 against Purdue or NC State to win, which, I mean, that's not that crazy. Like, they can get 90 pretty easily. So that's the number for them. If they're under 90, I just don't see them winning against UConn or Purdue or NC State. But yeah, that's all I got for the West.
I mean, Alabama has gotten 89 twice and 109 already, so I don't think it's definitely not out of the question. But I said it before, I'll say it again. Their offense has to carry them, and it has. Clemson tried making it a game in the Elite Eight where I don't even think any of us expected them to beat Arizona, but they met their match with Bama, just couldn't stop them. Like you guys said, 16 threes. That's a fuck ton of threes. So, I mean, it's just hard to beat that.
Yeah. Alabama and North Carolina. Alabama shoots when they shoot above 40% from three. It's hard to beat them. They shot 11 for 26 from three. They had 20 free throws, hit 70% of them. RJ Davis goes 0 for 9 from three, just goes completely cold. And North Carolina wasn't able to respond late. It's disappointing for this North Carolina team. Like you said, they benched Baycott with the 3 fouls. That came back to hurt them in the end, and Alabama was able to take over. And then Clemson, Arizona, same thing with Caleb Love. He goes ice cold and can't hit a shot. Unfortunate for these two guys that they were excited to play each other, and then it never got to happen because neither of them could hit a shot. Clemson played well. They did what they had to do to win, and that's what they did. I didn't know that you could watch live TV on airplanes now. I watched this game on an airplane. Pretty cool. But yeah,
You watch
Arizona
live TV
shoots-
on airplanes?
yeah.
Did they have
They
the
have-
screens
they
in
have
front of
live
you in
TV.
that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was able to get my laptop out and watch it on live
Really?
TV.
You
Yeah.
didn't pay for Wi-Fi, or you did?
No, Southwest live TV. Watch
Wow.
both games.
That's kind of
Uh,
crazy.
Oh, I do
Yeah,
have
that
some
was-
breaking. I do have some breaking news.
Oh
What's
boy.
that?
Transfer portal.
Oh,
Ronnie James in the transfer portal.
Really?
Yes. So that's a bomb. We'll see.
Michigan State.
It's April 2nd, so it's not an April Fool's joke. Yeah.
Ron,
Are you
if
sure
you're
it's not
watching
NBA
Ball State,
Central?
baby,
No, it's
please.
not. It's NBA Hoop Central and obviously on 3. So yeah,
Oh,
he is in the
wow.
transfer portal. We'll see where he goes. Maybe Ohio State. That was
Ronnie
not.
James, Ball State Cardinal. Who says no?
Ohio State could be.
But I mean, it's that'll be interesting. Maybe he's doing that and testing the draft waters. I know there's a lot of guys that are doing that. Adu Thiero is doing that. So maybe
I
that's
think
it
he
as well. But
stays somewhere. I think he goes somewhere where he can get a lot more minutes and just
yeah,
make a name for himself.
go
Maybe he
among
goes
your
As
to-
much as you can really say that with it being Bronny James, but
The UC Santa Barbara Gachos.
He could play for like a mid major, go get 30 a game, and get drafted first round.
that's what I think he might go do.
100% he could do that. But we will see. Moving on here. Are we done talking about the East here or the West? I mean, my bad.
I am, yeah.
Alabama beats Clemson. They again shot 44% from 3. They're going to win most games when they do that. They hit 16. If they're hot, they can beat anybody, but UConn's just tough.
Very tough. And they're just so good offensively and defensively. They're not. I don't think Bama's gonna be able to put 90, 95 points on them. I just don't see it. But moving on to the South here, Houston loses to Duke. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna talk about this game at all or give Duke any credit. Shed got hurt. They barely
Mhm.
beat Houston without Shed. Gonna be a National Player of the Year contender.
Mhm.
Best player on Houston. Houston absolutely, no question in my mind, is in the Final Four if he doesn't get hurt. So I'm not gonna give Duke any credit there. But NC State beats Marquette fairly easily. I still believe Shaka Smart's a great coach, but like these recent chokes have been tough for him. Obviously, hasn't been in the Final Four since 2011 with VCU, but I still think he's a really good coach. I don't think there's going to be any movement from him, of course, at Marquette, but these losses to double-digit seeds, or I guess Michigan State was a 9 seed, right, or 8 seed, or
7.
7, yeah, 7-10, right? But regardless, losing early on in these tournaments when you should be at least in the Elite Eight is tough for them. In the Elite Eight, NC State beats Duke for the second time this month. Duke got exposed for just not being that good of a team. They had a Mickey Mouse path playing, who was it, Vermont, JMU,
And injured Houston.
Houston without Shed, and then NC State, who was good enough to beat them twice in a month. So great for them. I'm happy for Burns, Diaco, Horn, because they just deserve this way more than we deserve to have a fraud Duke team in the Final Four who gets destroyed by Purdue. So I'm happy that NC State is there. Yeah, that's all I got for him.
You just got to feel for Houston and Houston fans. That injury kind of robbed them and robbed us as fans of a potential Houston Purdue Final Four game. That would have been
Houston, UConn, Natty. Oh man.
Yeah, it would be really nasty. But unfortunately, the best chance to take down Purdue, at least for me, kind of goes out of the way with Duke getting lucky. And then I picked NC State over Marquette, kind of just to see the 11 seed go. And because I hate Duke, I just was rooting for NC State regardless. So it's nice to see an 11 seed, kind of Cinderella, just start, or not start, but still dancing a little bit. But they got a tough one against Purdue coming up.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Josh Jamal Sheed getting hurt killed him. Broke my heart to watch him on the sideline. When you saw him on the scooter, you knew it was pretty much over from there. He wasn't going to come back, and LJ Cryer wasn't able to get it done. Houston, they're just pure hoops. They shot 2 for 8 from 3. There's not many teams out there in college sports college basketball or just basketball in general that'll only shoot 8 3-pointers in 40 minutes of basketball. Only hit 2 threes, and they were still in the game. Their offense, once Shed got hurt, was pretty much non-existent. Both teams shot 20 for 49. It was just 3-pointers were the difference. Houston wasn't able to make up for losing their best player. Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, Big 12 Player of the Year. It just sucks for him. Hopefully, I don't know if he has another year. I know he's a senior. I don't know if he gets an extra season or if he'll decide to not use it. But NC State, Marquette, again, Shaka Smart. I don't think he'll ever get fired from Marquette. This is better than they'll probably ever be. This is allegedly one of his dream job. I think he's from Wisconsin. They shot 4 for 31 from 3. They couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You're not going to win games when you shoot 4 for 31, 12% from 3. NC State just hit the shots they needed to. Well, when the other team can't hit a shot, there's not much they have to do. And then NC State, Duke, they were able to get it done. Duke got exposed, like you said. DJ Burns was phenomenal. He had 29 points on 13 for 19 shooting. He was the best player on the court. him versus Zach Edey is going to be an interesting battle. Who knows how it plays out, but it's going to be fun no matter what.
Yeah, I think DJ Burns already picked up at least his first foul in that game
Yeah.
as we speak. But yeah, as much as I do want to give Duke zero credit, I will say if this was Kentucky in that situation, I would definitely be spin zoning it. But I mean, you play. But I mean, I don't want to give Duke any credit. So we'll move on here to the last region. Speaking of Purdue, Purdue and Gonzaga was close for a lot of it early on, but Gonzaga just couldn't shoot their way out of this game. Their bigs couldn't handle Edey. He's just a force. He's had such a good tournament. Tennessee, they beat Creighton. Creighton was the team who I've been saying it, the team that I've been a big fan of all year, been betting on them all year. They're a team that matches up really well with Purdue. It sucked to see them go on that I don't remember what it was, like 20-0 run or something in the end of the first half, beginning of the second half of that game against Tennessee. They did have a little bit of a comeback there late, but that run was just too big for them to overcome. It sucks that we didn't get to see the Edey versus Kalkbrenner matchup. I really wanted to see how that played out. But moving on to the Elite Eight, Purdue gets their first Final Four since 1980. Tennessee is still at a big fat 0. Despite their fans' irrational confidence year in and year out, they continue to underperform and continue to not get to their goal, which is to make the semifinals of a tournament, which is sad to say the least. But um, Edey did shoot more free throws than field goals this game, but still played really well and had an outstanding tournament. A lot of the Edey fouls were dumb. A lot of them were just fouls. But I think at the end of the day, as much as I've been thinking about this game and looking back, I think that's the way you beat Purdue. I think you just have to put them on the line, just not let them get those stupid jump hooks, foul them hard every time. Got to have at least one guy in the game who you're willing to lose because you have to foul Edey. And then that's what you have to do if you have a big that can't guard him. Like Adu cannot guard Zach Edey. Like he's just not good enough for that. He's a good lob threat. He's good for the highlights, but when you're playing in the NCAA tournament, you need solid bigs who can defend and finish at the rim, and Adu is not one of those guys. But teams like UConn can guard him with Glengen. Creighton, like I said, could have guarded him had they beat Tennessee and not gone on that bad run in the middle of the game. But for these teams that maybe cannot guard him, like DJ Burns is phenomenal. He's not great defensively. I don't think he'll be on him. I would assume not, but I mean, I guess we'll see. Maybe they put DR on him, or sorry, Diaka, my bad. But um, yeah, we'll see what they end up doing. But I don't think that fouling him and just not letting him get finishes at the rim. He's a good free throw shooter when he gets in rhythm, but we've seen games where he hasn't been great from the line. He wasn't phenomenal from the line against Tennessee. So teams like that are going to have to do that to him. Like if Alabama ends up beating UConn somehow and plays Purdue, Alabama might have to play that way. I think NC State might have to play that way. UConn though can guard him straight up, and that would be a fun game.
Yeah, I'll kind of skip past the two Sweet 16 games as I was participating in an Easter egg hunt with my girlfriend's family. I won, by the way.
Congrats,
And
bro.
just go right towards the Purdue and
Big
Tennessee
time.
game.
Yep.
That
Banner.
that matchup was it was an exciting one. It really was. Going into it, I expected Purdue to kind of run away early, but they struggled to shoot to open the game. It felt like they had a lot of misses from that left corner, and Edey was just left trying to fend for himself in the paint. And then the fouling started, and then all that. But each team got out to multiple big leads, but the other one just kept closing in. It was a really good game, but Purdue, I guess you could say, in Edey really just put it on his back and just they came out with the win. I'm really hoping that this NC State and Purdue game is something down to the wire so we can see if Edey's really got that clutch gene because I felt like he missed a lot of free throws in the second half of that game. But maybe that's just me being a hater, but I don't know. Go NC State.
Yeah, Gonzaga Purdue was a great offensive battle. Both teams shot very good from the field. Gonzaga shot 49%. Purdue shoots 57% from the field, 45% from three. This game was close, but overall, Purdue has maybe the best offense in college basketball. Definitely one of them. Edey's just that good, and they were able to just keep the foot on the gas and beat them pretty easily towards the end. And then Tennessee Creighton, Tennessee was able to just pull away there late. Dalton Connect finally had one of an okay game. I think he had 26 points. Yeah, he didn't have the best shooting percentage, but 26 points. Creighton shot great from three, 47%, but Tennessee overall was just able to win the close game. And then Purdue versus Tennessee, like you guys said, Purdue, uh, Edey's just tough to guard. They were able to get him in foul trouble. Edie, they didn't shoot well from three in this game, Purdue, but they were still able to get the ball in the paint, definitely get to the free throw line, shot triple of Tennessee's free throws. But they also out rebounded them 47 to 26, 13 to 6 on offensive rebounds, 34 to 20 defensively. Uh, you can't discredit Edie just because he is a big player. He's still very talented. There's been tons of guys who are very tall, very large, and none of them have been able to dominate like Zach Edey can. I mean, he played 39 minutes in this game. I think he only sat for like 40 seconds. There's not many people that big who have that great of a gas tank to play that long. He shot 14 for 22 from the free throw line as well, which isn't the best, but that's still very good for someone his size. 16 rebounds, 40 points. That is just that's great. He's one of the better big men we've had in recent years, if not the best big man we've had in recent years. And Dalton Connect had a great game as well for Tennessee. It just wasn't enough. Edey was better. Connect had 37 points on 14 for 31 shooting. But Tennessee still has 0 Final Four appearances, and Purdue is back for the first time since 1980. They can finally hang another banner that isn't Big Ten related.
Yep, and we'll move on here to our Final Four and national championship predictions really quickly. Only 3 games to go over here. I'll start with the game we just talked about, or teams we just talked about. Sorry, Purdue and NC State. I like Purdue here, of course. I just think it's a tough matchup for NC State. Don't really have a guy down there that's going to be able to guard. DJ Barnes is going to be in foul trouble. He's not great defensively, and he does foul a lot. And we know when you're playing Zach Edey, it's easy to get in foul trouble. I think they're going to struggle in that game. The way you beat Purdue, like I just said, I mean, I think if NC State goes and makes ED shoot 22 free throws and only makes 14 of them and doesn't allow what Tennessee did was you fouled the hell out of him, but you also still allowed him to dominate half the time. If you just foul the hell out of him, make him shoot 30 free throws and he makes 17, you live with that. You run Purdue off the 3-point line. Don't let Lawyer and Smith and Lance Jones and Gillis to get off any threes, especially those like backside rebound threes in the corner from Gillis. If you could do that, I think you can beat them, but I'm going to have Purdue beat NC State here. NC State has to play damn near perfect to that strategy to win. I don't think they can. UConn, Alabama. UConn's just the best team in the tournament. They're well-rounded. They're one of the best offensive teams. They're one of the best defensive teams. Clinnigan is an absolute stud. Bama, just one-dimensional. They're really, really good on offense. They definitely can win. Like I said, I think they can win every game. I think they could win the whole thing. But they're going to have to go put up 90 plus, 95, 100 points to win these games. I just don't see them doing that against UConn. And then for the Natty, UConn and Purdue, I'm going to ride with UConn. I just think there's just not a team that could beat this team right now. Purdue is the best chance of any of these teams remaining to beat them, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, they're going to need Edey to go off for 40. They're going to need him to have a game that he had against Tennessee, not allow UConn to just dominate you in transition or have a bunch of backdoor cuts to easy dunks and layups. You can't have that happen. UConn's just such a disciplined team. And at the end of the day, even though this Purdue team has gone on a great run in this tournament and had their first good run with this core, we have not seen them be able to fully finish a job outside of the Big Ten tournament. We've seen them be able to win some tournament games this year, despite having a few bad losses early on in the past couple tournaments. And UConn's a team that, if they get to this game, will have won 11 straight tournament games. And it's hard to compete with that, to be honest. So I'm going to take UConn in the championship pedigree there. But it also, quick note, it is funny to me that the whole Purdue double-digit seed thing was a big thing going in this tournament. Oh, they made the Final Four and they broke it, and now they have to play another double-digit seed.
I didn't think of that. Oh
yeah.
no.
If there was ever a time.
If it happened again, I mean, it's
Oh
not
my
nearly
God.
as bad. Obviously, it's not nearly as bad in the Final Four. But
I low-key kind of think it's kind of bad. I mean,
it
you
is,
choke.
it is bad, but NC State is playing really good right now, and they beat good teams, or a good team.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of keep it brief.
Marquette, not Duke, by the way. So I'll start about that.
Right. I'm rooting for NC State, but I think Purdue just outmatches them. Like you mentioned, Josh, the strategy of just fouling Edey and hope he misses enough free throws and just being smart with your rotation. So if you were to lose a guy, it's not a guy who can semi put up a fight against Edey if you need to. So I think Purdue takes advantage of that unless NC State just is perfect in their strategy. And then UConn and Alabama. This is tough for me because I see the UConn in 04 and 14 they won, and it's 24, so they're kind of due. But Alabama, I've been riding with them the entire way. I've been saying their offense has been carrying them, and it has. I've been picking them this entire time. It's hard for me to stand on business when UConn is sitting across from them, but I'm going to continue to do it. I'm picking Alabama. I guess it's just a coin flip strictly because of what I want to just predict happens. But I think it'll be Alabama and Purdue in the championship. And unfortunately, I think Alabama's road will end there. Purdue, they're just, I don't think anybody on Bama is going to be able to guard Edie. So it's going to be Edie winning the championship, then going to the NBA draft and maybe getting drafted at the end of the first, early second. Just kind of storybook ending for you guys at Purdue.
Okay, I'm going to start with UConn versus Alabama. Uh, I think UConn's going to win this game. If Alabama gets hot and, like Josh said, if they score 90, they can easily win this game. If they shoot above 40% from three, they can win this game. But it is in an NFL stadium in Phoenix. A lot of times you see teams that shoot a lot of threes have issues with depth perception sometimes, and I think that might be a slight problem for them. And I also just believe UConn is a better basketball team all around. Klingon has been phenomenal as a big man. They're going to struggle to go into the paint, so they're going to have to shoot threes, and if they're not hitting them, they're not going to really have a chance. UConn is just that good. I think UConn's going to advance to the championship. And then NC State Purdue, I thought this was going to be an easy matchup for Purdue. I think Edie is just kind of a rough matchup for DJ Burns, but Josh has brought up the 10 seed issue with Purdue, and that has kind of made me nervous for the Boilermakers and the Big Ten, but I still think that Burns is a bad matchup for Edie. And I think Purdue is going to win this game and set up a championship that you could probably predicted 3-4 months ago. UConn, Purdue, both of these teams are the top two of the three teams, Houston being the third one. These two teams are great. It's going to be a great matchup. Edie versus Klingon is going to be a very good matchup. I think whoever wins that matchup might win the game, and I do think Edie's better. National Player of the Year. I think Purdue's other players are going to have to show up and have a big game. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith. I think Purdue just finds a way to get it done. It's been like 24 years since the Big Ten won a championship, and with Michigan State in 2000, shout out. I think they finally get it done and are the second team to lose to a 16 seed and come back the next year and win the national championship. Maybe it's just destiny. So I got Purdue winning the national championship.
Are you rooting for Purdue as a Big Ten fan? Because I know I'm not rooting for Bama as an SEC fan.
There's a lot of Big Ten fans who hate Purdue. Throughout the season, I've hated Purdue considering how the Big Ten refs officiate Edie and all that. But I would like to see a Big Ten team finally win a championship without cheating, like Michigan did in football, an actual championship. And considering I know a couple people from Purdue, people who are currently at Purdue, I think it'd be dope for the city of West Lafayette to have a national championship celebration.
It would be. I was thinking about this a lot because I'm obviously not rooting for Bama as an SEC fan, but I feel like the only way you can get away with the whole rooting for your conference thing in this situation, in March Madness, is if it's like a high seed. Like if I don't know, like if A&M was in the Final Four as a 9 seed, I would be rooting for A&M. But like the top seeds, like I can't root for Bama to beat UConn and then go on to beat Purdue or NC State. Just something about it, having that, and it's like I guess the good teams, but.
Yeah, usually the Big Ten fans absolutely just hate each other and always root for the other team's downfall, especially in football. In football, no matter what, I'm rooting for the Big Ten teams to lose. But in basketball, I feel like it's just kind of different. Usually, especially in the early rounds, you kind of want to see your teams in your conference win early and just make your conference look better. And then the farther in you get, it's like you kind of want them to lose. And in the past, I've wanted Purdue to lose. The year Michigan State made the Final Four in 2019 and Purdue had the crazy game against Virginia. I wanted them to lose that game, but I think the Big Ten is due, and knowing a lot of Purdue people, although I guess it would suck because they'd probably talk a lot of shit, but it would be nice to see them win.
And I think it has to do with whether your team's like competitive or not, or like has a real chance. Like
Yeah.
Kentucky football, like if it's Bama and Clemson in the national championship, I'm gonna root for Bama just because like it's not like they prevented us from making it.
No, I'd root against the Big Ten and anything football related.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's conference to conference or situation to situation. But yeah, I agree. I'm rooting for like my conference in the first couple of rounds, and then after that, I'm rooting for him to die off. You don't want to see your conference get like 1-7 in the first round. It's just a brutal look. But we can wrap up March Madness there then and move on to our last recap a couple weeks late. AFC and NFC North recap. Starting off with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were in 2024, they were 9-8. In 2023, they were 12-4 and lost in the AFC Championship to the Kansas City Chiefs, the eventual champions. Burrow this season played many games hurt early, missed a ton of games for the second half of the season, missed the whole second half of the season, and that injury just kind of ruined this season for them. Their defense was not great, as it has been at least okay the past few seasons for them, enough for them to be able to get to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship like they've been able to. But it was not good enough this season to overcome the Burrow injury. They still finished above 500 with Burrow, as every team in this AFC North division did, which is insane. But the season's kind of a scrap for them. You didn't have your starting quarterback when they get him back. Next season will be able to show what this team's really about, where their holes are, what they need to improve on. Um, and in the offseason, they lose Callahan to Tennessee, their OC. So we'll see what they do there and how their offense changes year to year without him. But just one of those teams where you have a bad QB injury. What do you make of the season?
Yeah, this entire division, we mentioned it during our division previews way back in August, I think it was. This division was going to be a bloodbath, and the Bengals finishing at 9-8 and being last just shows that to a point. The Burrow injuries at the beginning of the season with his calf and at the end of the season where he just didn't play, they really seemed to derail the season from the very beginning. But Browning was way better than we expected while he came in relief. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were great per usual. They each had like their own signature games. It felt like whether it was Jamar with his, I think he had like 2 or 3 touchdowns against San Francisco, and then Higgins, he had that crazy catch against Minnesota on the Saturday game. And then Joe Mixon, he was pretty inconsistent, but now he's gone. Chase Brown was fun for a rookie who will probably take a bigger role in the next season he plays. The defense as a whole was pretty average, but Trey Hendrickson continues to be a very underrated edge rusher who quietly had a career year with 17 sacks. And in a super talented top end of the draft, they'll be able to snag a really good starter at the 18th pick, or they may be able to move up if they decided to trade T. Higgins and they use that draft capital to move up for an even better player. Maybe they go interior defensive line to replace Reeder, who went to Detroit, or even an edge rusher just to give Hendrickson that partner in crime on the opposite side of them. So the Bengals have a lot of really good places they could go, but I don't know if they'll have T. Higgins next year just because he requested a trade a little while ago. We haven't heard much on that front.
Nothing.
So
Radio silence, man.
yeah, but I mean, I don't remember if any Bengals personnel said that they're just not trading him unless that was another player. But yeah, like you said, radio silent. So maybe he stays. Maybe they do figure out how to pay Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow. But it'll be very interesting.
And Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, the best division in football here. Each team finished above 500. Bengals finished 9-8, like you guys said. They lost Brian Callen, like you said. Dan Pitcher, their former quarterbacks coach, will become their offensive coordinator. So they stayed in house there. They had a rough start to the season. I think they started 1-3. Burrow missed a lot of camp with an injury, but he got him back in the hunt. They were looking pretty solid, and then he goes against Baltimore, hurts his hand, even hurts his. Well, I don't know if it was wrist or his hand, but it was out for the rest of the season. And that really kind of was the writing on the wall overall for their ceiling. Jake Browning came in and had some good games, had a great game against the Colts. He had games where he looked good, but it really just wasn't enough to sneak him into the playoffs. Jamar Chase was phenomenal. He had a rough start as well, but once him and Burrow got it going, he continued his play throughout the season. I thought T. Higgins was very disappointing this season, only 650 yards in 12 games. He was dealing with a couple injuries. You expect more from someone as talented as him. I was kind of surprised they tagged him, but it does make sense. Joe Mixon, like you said, was pretty inconsistent. Towards the end of the season, we saw a lot more Chase Brown, which I liked. And it's kind of the writing on the wall for Joe Mixon, considering you're paying him that much. You kind of have to get rid of him as a cap casualty. They have a nice signing in the offseason with Zach Moss. I think him and Chase Brown will be a pretty solid RB duo. But really just a disappointing season that you kind of couldn't avoid considering the injuries to Burrow. Just unfortunate they were one of the teams that got caught up in the mass starting quarterback injuries that we saw all season. So when you lose your franchise quarterback that you're paying that much money to, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, moving on here to the Steelers, and this year they were 10-7. Last year they were 9-8. They lost to the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round this season. This is a crazy season for them with quarterback carousel, offensive coordinator carousel. The defense had a hot start, ended up being around league average on the year, but we know how dangerous they can be, especially when they have TJ Watt and Minka and everybody healthy. They had a lot of injuries on the defensive end this season. The team was well coached enough to overcome all of that though and still make the playoffs, still win 10 games. And they were sneaky in that Bills wild card game. They had a tough stretch in the middle of the game, but they were good in the beginning and they were good in the end. They definitely could have won that game had they had maybe TJ Watt, or had that game been played in the snow and they didn't cancel it. But now they have Russell Wilson, Justin Fields at quarterback for next season. That should be interesting which way they go with that. But a lot of question marks of what they're gonna do. And we got to just let that play out as time goes on.
Yeah, last year the Steelers quarterback situation was just a complete mess. Pickett did have a promising preseason, and I think all three of us were kind of hoping he would keep that continuing into the regular season for a year two kind of leap, but it never really happened. Najee and Jalen Warren were a pretty solid duo. They both had over 1,000 scrimmage yards or 1,000 rushing yards or something like that. It was the first time in a little while that two running backs in the same backfield had that. Pickens was good, but just had an inconsistent year in general, statistics wise, most likely due to the quarterback play. But he seemed to be phased out of the offense at times as well. So maybe that's a Matt Canada problem. We don't know. TJ Watt headlined a pretty solid defense for the entire year and had 19 sacks. Probably could have won Defensive Player of the Year too, but I think he deserved it, but he ended up not winning. Tomlin somehow found himself above 500 yet again and continues to show he's a phenomenal coach despite the quarterback situation and the roster structure. Uh, where are they picking? 19, or I think they're picking at 20 this year.
19,
So
17, 20, one of those.
somewhere late teens or just exactly 20. But you would think with all the Justin Fields mock trades, I was thinking maybe I'd know. But
Yeah, fair
yeah,
enough.
they got a chance to either bolster the O-line, maybe help out DJ Watt on defense, but they do have Highsmith on the other side. So maybe they just leave that alone and let Minga get healthy. But they got a lot of ways they can go. Mentioned it before. It's a really deep draft, at least in the first round. So they can get talent and really improve anywhere.
Yeah, they a classic Mike Tomlin season. You finish above 500 with a team that isn't as talented as some of the other teams. He's almost too good of a coach to help make this Steelers roster better. TJ Watt obviously was phenomenal this season. I'm with you, Zach. I think he should have won DPOY. 19 sacks, led the NFL, 4 forced fumbles, led the Steelers defense. Without him in the playoffs, we saw they were not as good. They got off to a nice start of, I think there was 7-4, but they Kenny Pickett injury didn't help. Mitch Trubisky came in and was not very good. When you look at this team and you look at the stat boxes from some of these games, it's hard to imagine that they were 7-4 at the time. You could see the passing yards rarely, whereas Kenny Pickett in above 200 yards, but their defense was able to get them wins. Their running game was able to get them wins. They fired Matt Canada halfway through the season, which helped the offense a little bit. We saw Mason Rudolph come in and play very solid, led them to 3 straight wins at the end of the regular season, brought them to the playoffs, just was unable to get it done there. After the preseason, their expectations got a little higher. They did win the preseason Super Bowl, but Kenny Pickett was not able to make that leap. And I think it was the right move to move on from him. Now you got two quarterbacks who I think both could be starters in Fields and Russell Wilson. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm assuming it'll be Russell Wilson, but Arthur Smith as the new OC. Interesting to see how he does. Maybe George Pickens will never get the ball again. We'll just have to see.
Yep, moving on here to the Cleveland Browns. 2024, this year they were 11-6, lost in the wild card round to Houston. Last year they were in 2023, they were 7-10. They made the playoffs and won 11 games with 5 different starting quarterbacks this year, which is just crazy for Stefanski and the Browns. They clean up at the awards. They win Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Assistant Coach of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year, with Stefanski, Garrett, Jim Schwartz, and Joe Flacco winning those awards. Lost Nick Chubb week 2, dealt with a lot of injuries just throughout the whole season, and still had a really good year for them. Winning 11 games, of course, and making the playoffs for the Browns is always good, especially in a year like this. They could have easily got deflated by that Nick Chubb injury early on and not great quarterback play, but they overcome it. It's just a sign of a well-coached team. And they're super talented just overall. But they get blown out in the wild card game. Joe Flacco's run kind of ended there, but what can you do? I mean, you got Joe Flacco, a guy who probably wasn't going to play all season. He comes in, gets you a ton of wins, gets you to the playoffs. Like, not much you can do in that situation if you're the Browns with the quarterback situation. But as far as the future, it all just still depends on, do we get to see a good Deshaun Watson, because they're paying him so much money that it's hard to stomach him not playing well enough. And if he plays well, this team can be really, really good. Over who did they picked up a receiver? I'm blanking on who they picked up.
Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy, right? Yeah, I mean, so we'll see if Jerry Jeudy can live up to his potential going into the year or going into his career. But yeah, it's all going to be on Deshaun Watson, or maybe Jameis Winston next season.
Ooh. But that kind of segues perfectly into my first point. Watson just didn't take that step forward that I was hoping he was going to make. I was thinking that last year was kind of, or 2022, not last year, was more of like a rust thing where he just wasn't playing enough and just getting back into the swing of things. But nah, he just didn't look good this year. So Flacco was really the only consistent starter, but really faltered in that wild card round against the Texans in the playoffs. Chubb went down in week 2, but Jerome Ford turned out to be a solid backup. He produced pretty well and he was moving the chains more often than not. Amari Cooper was pretty great despite having a lot of bad quarterback play. And Njoku played like a top 5 tight end this year and was an absolute trooper with playing with the shiesty on despite those burns that he got from that fire. And the defense played really well and kept the Browns in games that they really had no business being in and even winning them a couple as well, one of which was that San Francisco 49ers game. Sure, the Niners weren't super healthy and they missed the kick, but you got to give props to the Cleveland defense. The Niners were a really good team and still are. Garrett won Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, Mike and I told you our thoughts already. Should have gone to TJ Watt, but Garrett was still phenomenal. Denzel Ward was pretty solid. JOK was really good. He was a tackle machine, and he just seemed to be everywhere in pass coverage and just filling a lot of run gaps. But as an outlook, this team is kind of in hell for the next 5 years or so because of this Deshaun Watson contract. It'd be different if they were getting Patrick Mahomes level production along with this like 50 million guaranteed per year over the next 5 years or maybe 4 years because I think this year was the first year of that. But the vets on this team are only getting older and they don't have a pick in the first round this year because of that Deshaun Watson trade. So it's going to be a very pivotal offseason for them to see if they rally around Deshaun Watson and think he can make that step back to what he was in Houston, or if they try and pivot and just get rid of all that dead money as soon as possible and try and get some sort of quarterback here that they can rely on while they have all that talent on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, very interesting season for the Cleveland Browns. Considering everything that happened, they have to be happy with how the season kind of turned out. Deshaun Watson didn't play great at the start of the season. He had his best game in the game that he got hurt in and was unable to return. He continues got hurt. PJ Walker wasn't it. DTR wasn't it. They end up on Joe Flacco, who saves their season. They also had to deal with losing Nick Chubb, which was a tough one to watch. The run game was okay to begin with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, but in the end it slowed down. And towards the end of the season, their running game really wasn't there. Amari Cooper was good, but David Njoku was one of their main studs on this offense. He finally had a breakout season that we've been waiting for. Was one of the best tight ends all season. I guess all he needed to do was almost set himself on fire to really start breaking out. 81 receptions, 882 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, all towards the top of tight ends. He was phenomenal. And defensively, they were one of the best units in the NFL under Jim Schwartz. They were first in passing yards allowed per game, 164.7, 11th in rushing yards, 105.5, fifth in sacks with 49. Consistently one of the best defenses out there. Myles Garrett was phenomenal, like you said. I don't think he deserved DPOY, but great with 14 sacks, like you said. Zach JOK was phenomenal, and Jim Schwartz was great as well. But like I said earlier, Flacco was their main force into pushing them into the playoffs. He was great. They weren't able to finish the season like they would have hoped with the loss to Houston, but at that point, CJ Stroud kind of just seemed like a buzzsaw. They were the 5 seed, had to go to Houston, and just unfortunate with CJ Stroud playing that well, but a great season considering all of the adversity they had to face.
Yep, moving on here to the Ravens, the final team in this division, 2024. This year they were 13-4, lost in the AFC title game. Last year they were 10-7, lost in the wild card round. Lamar wins MVP. The Ravens were the most complete team offensively and defensively all season. They're up there at the top ranks on defense, and then having an MVP caliber or MVP winning quarterback at the helm was great for them. It looked like they were one of the favorites to make the Super Bowl, if not the favorite to make the Super Bowl out of the AFC. Played well in the playoffs, beating the Texans, and then in that game against Kansas City where they couldn't beat Mahomes. I still go back and think about that game, and just if the Ravens just ran the ball, they could have won that game against the Chiefs, and we could have been in a scenario where we had Niners Ravens again in the Super Bowl, and I think that it just blows my mind that they didn't run the ball more that game. They were in a chance where they could have ran the ball more. It was never a blowout game, but they just couldn't do it offensively there in that AFC title game. The Ravens roster and coaching staff kind of just got torn apart this offseason with McDonald going to the Seahawks. And The good side for the Ravens, at least, is you have Lamar long term. There was a time last year where that wasn't a concern. That's no longer a concern, so that's good for them that they got that situation figured out. Similar to the Colts with Jonathan Taylor, where you can look back after the season, you're always going to have that you got that situation figured out. And now for the Ravens, you have Derrick Henry coming in, so they're going to have more shots to win the Super Bowl and make the Super Bowl. But this was a year they could have and probably should have done it.
Yeah, as a whole, this team had honestly a great year. Lamar won MVP, and it was with the best supporting cast that he's probably ever had, and he really made the most of it. Andrews was great. Likely was really good all year and provided some really clutch plays when Andrews got hurt late in the season. Flowers had a really solid rookie year. It did feel like their starting running back was just a new guy each week because of injury and whoever had the hot hand that week. The defense looked like a top tier unit for most of the year, headlined by Roquan Smith and Justin Matabuke. Kyle Hamilton was there as well, and he was an absolute dog in the secondary. He played a lot of nickel corner, and he played back deep at safety, and he just made plays wherever he played. If they add a receiving weapon in the first or second round of the draft, you got to look out because they'll be poised to make another AFC championship run, if not even further than that. Like you mentioned, Josh, if they just ran the ball a little bit more, maybe we do see them in the Super Bowl and Lamar's hoisting the Lombardi along with the Super Bowl MVP. But that's a different world, and we don't really want to play the what if game right now. So next year, they're definitely going to be competing for the AFC North title again, and maybe even AFC champs as well.
Yeah, the Ravens had maybe the exact regular season they wanted to have. We had talked about it with the 49ers where there's not much they could have done better as like building a roster standpoint. They were just unable to get it done. I mean, this Ravens roster has really no holes. You can go maybe their running back position, but they lost J.K. Dobbins right away early in the season. Lamar Jackson was phenomenal this year. He won MVP, but most importantly, he stayed healthy. Was healthy all season. Was able to pass the ball very well. Didn't run as much, but was still effective running the ball. Their defense was like the um, Browns, one of the best units in the entire NFL. Mike McDonald was phenomenal. But they just couldn't get it done in the playoffs against the Chiefs. They looked unwilling to run the ball. Lamar didn't really want to run the ball with his legs. And all season we had talked about how great he was in the pocket, but the Chiefs seemed like they wanted him to force him to run the ball. He didn't want to do it, and the Chiefs were able to just pick him apart defensively there. And defensively, they had one of the best units. They led the NFL in sacks throughout the season with, I think, 60. And against Mahomes, they were really unable to get sacks and not enough pressure on him. So with the Ravens, there's not much they could have done to get better. They were able to upgrade the running back position with Derrick Henry, which will be scary to watch. But this Ravens team is going to be good next year, no matter what. It'll just be interesting to see how this new coaching staff is able to step in.
Moving on here to the NFC North with the Chicago Bears. This year they were 7-10. Last year they were 3-14. Two massive seasons for them. Very successful. No, but Bears had a tough start this year. They went on a 5-3 stretch, 10 the season. They had a great win over the Lions, but I will say their other wins were Panthers, Vikings, Falcons, Cardinals. Four juggernauts for them to beat going to the end of the season here. Defense really established itself this season. Sweat had a great year. Getting him at the deadline was one of the, I would say, one of the two best things to happen to the Bears this year. The other being the Panthers being just horrible and getting to fall on your quarterback. Had the Panthers not been horrible, or at least not as horrible as they were, and the Bears had like the fifth pick or the sixth pick, they'd be in a much worse spot right now than they are. Uh, they would still have Justin Fields at quarterback. They wouldn't be considering any other options, and that would be the way they moved forward. And I just don't think that's an opportunity for success. Now they have Caleb Williams. They're going to get Caleb Williams after trading Fields to the Steelers, barring an absolute draft night shocker, which would be hilarious. But the Bears have a super bright future. I'm confident this team can be pretty good. I don't think they're going to win the division next year. I don't even know if they're necessarily going to finish top two in the division next year, but they have a bright future, but it's all dependent on Caleb Williams. If Caleb Williams doesn't end up being this generational prospect, what are you going to do?
Yeah, Fields completely improved from 2022, but there's going to be a new face in 2024. It should be Caleb Williams, but I don't know. It might be a big smoke screen. Khalil Herbert was fine when he was healthy. Rashawn Johnson showed some real toughness as a runner and a pass blocker, but we did get a nice receiving back option in DeAndre Swift in the offseason. DJ Moore was better than advertised and had a career year. Cole Kmet also had a career year as well. In the first half of the year, the defense was honestly just ass. No other way to put it. The second half of the year, they really stepped up with the addition of Montez Sweat. Having a good pass rush really benefited the really good secondary. And in the last 6 games of the year, they were first in the NFL in points per game allowed, rushing touchdowns allowed, and interceptions. They're primed for a top 10 year in 2024, and I'm really excited about it. TJ Edwards feels like the steal of the 2023 offseason, put up all pro level numbers on only $6 million a year. Jalen proved to be a top corner in the entire league and got paid because of it. Tyreek Stevenson started a little slow, but he had a phenomenal back half of the year. Gervon Dexter had a solid rookie year and was honestly better than I anticipated. Andrew Billings was great and really earned his 2 year extension. But no one should ever forget Cairo Santos either. He was extremely consistent in 2022 and 2023. And he may not have that Justin Tucker leg, but he's still really good. The big question going into the offseason for the Bears was obviously what would they do at quarterback? Now that Fields is gone, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be a rookie. But now they have pick number 9 that we really don't know what they're going to do with. Could it be a receiver to just bolster that room and add to Keenan Allen and DJ Moore? Or are they going to add an edge rusher like Laiatu Latu or what's his name, Jared Verse, to have opposite of Montez Sweat and just create a really scary duo? I do think they could add on the interior defensive line in the later rounds as well. A guy like Byron Murphy at pick 9, or trade back and get him a little bit later as well. I wouldn't be upset at that. He would be a great 3 tech and would add a little bit more depth to a room that you're kind of relying on your top 2 guys to provide a lot of the snaps. But I'm going to trust whatever Poles does. I've been trusting him the entire time. I think he's done great. Sure, he's gotten a little bit lucky with the whole Keenan Allen trade, with him becoming available, getting pick number 1. But I guess we'll see if the results start to show next year. Josh, you do say that they have no chance of finishing top 2, or very minimal chance of finishing top 2. Honestly,
did I say no chance? I don't think I said no chance.
I don't remember what you were saying.
I think I said I just don't. I think I said I don't see them.
I don't remember exactly what you said. I just remember hearing not top 2, and I'm like, I don't know. But I mean,
I think they'll compete with the Packers.
I think they really could. I think they could.
Not in the head-to-head games, but
just record-wise, they might.
Yeah, I think they can,
because Bears finished 4 and Packers were what, 2? So strength of schedule is obviously different.
Yep.
But I think top 3 in the division should be the expectation, and I think above 500 as well. I think 9 and 8 should be your floor if you don't suffer any major injuries, considering you're getting one of the better quarterback prospects we've seen since Andrew Luck, and the roster has improved since last year. You've gotten a bunch of really, really good players. So, and the schedule kind of looks pretty nice. So it's all going to depend on Caleb Williams, though. If he comes out and he does enough, then the team around him is good enough to really carry him. But if he kind of shits the bed, then it might turn into a Walmart Cleveland Browns situation where the defense isn't that good, but they'll keep you in games. So I don't think Caleb's going to bust like that, but I do think he will. I'm expecting a CJ Stroud level rookie year from him, where you make the playoffs and you should do your damn best to win a playoff game as well.
Yeah, shout out Andrew Luck. Caleb Williams is not as good as Andrew Luck. I just want to put that out there. But the Bears had a disappointing-ish 2023-2024 season. The start of the season was very disappointing. Fields wasn't playing great. The defense was struggling. But towards the end, they were able to turn it around. They didn't get the leap from Fields that they had basically guaranteed would happen. It never happened. He wasn't consistent enough. Their defense, though, after a rough start, Eberflus took over the play calling. They acquired Montez Sweat, and it really turned this unit around towards the end of the season. They were one of the better units. They had the Panthers pick, like you guys said, so Caleb Williams, most likely a Bear. That will definitely bolster this offense. They're able to trade for Keenan Allen, which will also help this offense. They keep Jalen Johnson, which is big for their defense. I think this team will be solid next year. I think they'll fight for that 2 seed, like you guys said. It's interesting to not fire Matt Eberflus for me. I thought they would try to maybe go for an offensive-minded coach, but they're going to stick with him. Hopefully he's developed a culture that'll help bring Caleb Williams in and be confident. At the pick 9 is where I'm most interested to see what they do. Do they try to bolster their O-line, help protect Caleb Williams, maybe get a weapon, which I don't think would be the smart move considering you now have Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, and I think Cole Kmet's good enough to be a tight end 1. Or you go on defense and try to help either the pass rush or maybe the secondary. But disappointing for the Bears to not have Justin Fields be the franchise quarterback you had expected him to become. It just didn't work out. I blame it on the coaching and just the front office in general. But yeah, now they have a chance to really turn it around and put a rookie quarterback in one of the best positions possible.
Yep, I agree. Moving on here to the Vikings. This year they were 7-10. Last year they were 13-4. Won all those close games. Kirk Cousins injury obviously hurt them, although they were 3-4 with Kirk Cousins in that phenomenal start for him. But Jefferson was hurt for much of the season. They played a lot of the year without him, with backup quarterbacks coming in and out. Defense was much better with Brian Flores and his aggressive style. One of the better Vikings defenses we've seen in recent years when they've been competitive. But they just didn't have Kirk Cousins. They didn't have the offense to match that and go win some games. Now they don't have Kirk next year because he's going to Atlanta, and it looks like they're going to start Darnold or a rookie quarterback, or both. They're looking at JJ McCarthy. I've seen there's been a lot of mocks of him there. We'll see what happens there, but not going to be a great year, I don't think, for the Vikings next year. We hinted at it earlier. Jefferson might want out. Maybe he wants to go play with the Bengals. Maybe he just wants to play with a different team. But there's going to be a decision to be had there for him and the Vikings. But I would say the Vikings have the doomest future of the NFC North right now. It's not looking great for them unless they JJ McCarthy or whoever they draft ends up being a great quarterback, or if they trade up maybe and get Drake May, then they could be in a better situation. But we'll see what happens with them. I don't love Darnold. I don't love JJ McCarthy. So if that's the route they go, then I don't love their future.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk was having an MVP level year prior to his injury, and some of it was without Justin Jefferson, too. Hawkinson was probably the best tight end in football this year. The running game just didn't provide the juice that they had hoped after getting rid of Dalvin Cook and giving the starting job to Alexander Madison. Jordan Addison, though, was really solid and stepped up big when Jefferson went down with the injury. And Jefferson still had over 1,000 yards in under 10 games played. It's just insanely absurd if you really think about it. The defense didn't have any extraordinary talent outside of Daniil Hunter, but Flores' scheme gave quite a few teams some trouble. The Bears might have been one of them, but I don't want to talk about that right now. Hunter had a really good year and will be taking his talents to Houston, so they got to try and what's the word that they used in Moneyball? Reinvent or recreate. They got to recreate him. Right. So they got to recreate Daniil Hunter and get some pass rushing juice out of what they got. But the quarterback situation is the big question right now. They don't have it entirely figured out yet. Like you mentioned, Josh, they did sign Darnold, but with the acquisition of pick number 23 in the draft from Houston, from what I've seen, most believe that Minnesota may trade up into the top 5 for a quarterback, whether it's Drake May if he slips to 3 with the Patriots, or they just trade with the who's picking 5? The Chargers for McCarthy. Now, I do think McCarthy could be really interesting in Minnesota. What is it? KOC, Kevin O'Connell. He I think he could do some real damage with JJ McCarthy. Having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as your receivers would be phenomenal. Also having TJ Hawkinson as a security blanket would be great as well. But my worst nightmare would be them somehow trading up to 3 and getting Drake May if he fell. I think Washington would be making a fatal mistake by passing on him and taking Jaden Daniels instead. So I'm not very high on JJ McCarthy, but with an offensive mind like KOC, he could do some serious damage.
The Vikings are another team who had to suffer through losing their starting quarterback to a season-ending injury. Unfortunately, Kirk Cousins, like we said, he tore his Achilles. We've had a lot of Kirk Cousins debate on this pod, but he was playing very good before the injury. You can't really debate that. They were missing Jefferson. They were still able to play pretty well. Addison looked solid as a rookie. One of their main issues on offense was Alexander Madison really not being the guy they wanted at running back. They go out in the offseason and they get Aaron Jones, so hopefully he's able to stay healthy and that can help them offensively. But right now with Sam Darnold as I think they kind of said they're kind of starting to plan on rolling him out as their starting quarterback. I don't see that working out very well for them. I was not expecting much from their defense this year at all, but Brian Flores was phenomenal. He made this unit a lot better than they should have been. They are losing debatably their best player in Daniil Hunter, so it's going to be interesting to see how they recreate that, like you said, Zach. Losing a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and considering those are your 2 best players, I don't know, and 2 of the most important positions, I don't know how they're going to be able to win more games than they did last year. They have a great coaching staff with KOC and Brian Flores, so they'll find a way to win a few games. I just don't expect it to be too many. This team basically hit their ceiling last year with what they could accomplish given losing Kirk Cousins. They have to almost go quarterback, but I don't think they will. And I don't think Justin Jefferson is going to be very thrilled with that. So They haven't signed to a contract yet. Will be interesting to see if they are able to get it done, and I don't think they'll be able to.
Moving on here to the Green Bay Packers in 2024, they were 9-8, lost in the divisional round. In 2023, they were 8-9. This Packers team had the youngest offense in the league, and they played great. Jordan Love showed that he's probably going to be an amazing quarterback in this league. Sadly, as much as I didn't want to see that happen, it is going to happen most likely. The young receivers played pretty well. Watson was hurt for a lot of the season. When he gets back, he might be the best receiver of that bunch. So we can have a good full season of being healthy. I think he'll be great for them. Defense for them played great at times, horrible at other times. And early in the season, when the offense was struggling, the defense really came through, kept them in games. Later on in the season, when their offense started playing well, their defense wasn't playing as well. They weren't able to stop the run. But going and getting a road playoff win was huge for this young team. And then they went and competed in that game with the Niners, who ended up making the Super Bowl in San Francisco. But this Packers team has a really bright future. I'm sadly pretty high on them. I was hoping after the Rodgers era we were going to finally get a drop off for them. It doesn't seem like we're going to though, and they're on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, it starts a little bit more for both of us, Josh, than it does for really anybody else. But pains me to say it, they might have done it again. Jordan Love was pretty good in his first year as a starter. Crazy enough, he would have broken multiple, if not all, of the Bears' passing records if he had done what he did in Chicago. The wide receiver group that they had rolling out with this year, it wasn't filled with a bunch of superstars, but a lot of really good talent. I was high on Jaden Reed in particular coming into the year. Watson showed flashes when the hamstring wasn't bugging him. And Dobbs, he had a solid second year. Aaron Jones couldn't stay healthy, but when he was pretty good. AJ Dillon, it feels like he just fell off the face of the earth. The defense wasn't anything spectacular, but got the job done in multiple games. Gary was fighting to come back from that injury he suffered in 2022. So he had a slow start to the year, but when he's at his best, he's pretty damn good. Luke Van Ness showed some flashes, but he's going to need a little bit more time to develop. And Matt LaFleur really proved to be one of the better coaches in the NFL, being able to work around a first year starter and just making him look like a seasoned vet who's been playing for 7 or 8 years. It's not an easy thing to do. Jordan Love, his part to do with that, but the other part is Matt LaFleur and maybe a little bit of Aaron Rodgers as well. But the Packers are, like you said, Josh, they are poised to be on the upward trajectory, and it really sucks to say, but they might have their third straight quarterback who's just going to win them games.
Yeah, they had a great first game against the Bears, and after that, Jordan Love had his struggles as a young quarterback, but he figured it out towards the end of the season and looked like a franchise quarterback. Very good, especially in the playoffs against the Bears in Week 18. The young receiving, like you said, Watson, Reed, Dobbs, and even Dontavian Wicks were phenomenal. Musgrave had some moments as a young tight end when they were healthy. Their O-line was solid enough. Their run game was not great throughout the season with Aaron Jones being injured for a big part of the year. They're trying to fix that issue by switching from Jones and signing Josh Jacobs. I think that'll help their run game. I expect Jordan Love to take another step forward next year and possibly be even better. They have a very good future. Their defense was iffy, but I think that they'll be fine. With another good draft class, continue to let Jordan Love develop into the potential franchise QB we're seeing. This Packers team could be very good for the future. And besides the Vikings, the NFC North has a very good future ahead of it, it seems.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving on to the last team here, the reigning, defending NFC North champions, the Detroit Lions. In 2024, this year they were 12-5, lost in the NFC Championship. Last year they were 9-8, just missed the playoffs. This is the most successful Lions season in the Super Bowl era. Broke all kind of bad streaks from playoff wins to home playoff games to everything of that matter. Wins in a season. They won 2 home playoff games, beating Stafford and the Rams, killing out all those demons there. And then beating the Bucks at home the next week after that. They had the best rookie class in the league with Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, and Branch in those top 4. They were looked at as clowns for drafting the way they did, and then they ended up having the best class by far. All 4 of those guys made big playoff impacts for them, especially Gibbs and Laporta on offense. Laporta is already a top 5 tight end in the league, and I think Gibbs is a fringe top 10 back. They had the best running back duo in the league with Gibbs and Monty, 2 absolute studs, 2 guys that I don't think it's crazy to put in the top 20 in the league. Biggest weakness was the secondary. They improved in free agency. They should be a lot better. I don't know if I really want to say anything about the Cam Sutton situation, but he did some shit. He ran. He finally turned himself in. He's no longer a Lion. Um, I'm not gonna make a joke about it, but he didn't want to tackle all season, and now whatever. Um, Dan Campbell's aggressive nature got them to the top, and he shouldn't ease up at all, even though people tried to make it seem like he should. I want him to go all steam ahead, doing the exact same thing he did last season. If Reynolds makes any of his catches on fourth down, if Vilder makes the catch that went off the helmet of Brandon Ayuk for that catch in the third quarter, then the Lions are in the Super Bowl. So those decisions, although maybe the last one was questionable, uh, doesn't make me think that he should back off at all. We've seen coaches like Brandon Staley, for example, who his first couple of years he was super aggressive, and then he got to the point where it burned him a couple times, and then he wanted to be a little more passive, and that's just not what you can do. You need to stick to a strategy and stay with it. And I think Dan Campbell's going to. I don't think he's the type of guy to switch up because everyone's saying he should. I think the Lions are a top 3 to 5 team in the NFL. I think they were this year. I know they were this year. I think they're going to be once again next year. They had arguably the best offseason of any team. That's up for debate, of course, but getting DJ Reader big time for that inside defensive line. Kevin Zeitler for the guard position that they badly needed, losing Jonah Jackson and signing Zeitler, who's just as good, if not better, for a lot less money. Going you trade for Carlton Davis to help out that secondary a lot. Probably will draft a corner, I would assume, after the Cam Sutton situation in the first round. And then you keep both your coordinators, especially Ben Johnson, who was almost a sure thing to Washington, it looked like, and then ends up saying he doesn't want to go there, even though Washington made it seem like that wasn't the case. It definitely was when you take a first class trip to Detroit to interview a guy and then he tells you no. And you're like, oh no, I didn't. It's like you, not to go all Colin Cowherd, but it's like you want to date some girl and then she curves you and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't even want her anyways. Like, oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you did, Washington. Barring injuries, I think the Lions are going to go to at least the NFC Championship next season with a division title, and I think they can make and win the Super Bowl. I think they have the talent. There's not many holes on this team. I think you need one more DB, and that's about it. The D line's going to be much improved. Maybe you need an edge rusher as well, but at the end of the day, if Marcus Davenport can stay healthy, you have Reader in there now and Ali McNeil, two of the best run defenders in the league, and then Aiden Hutchinson, of course, who hopefully will not receive as many double teams this year with more help on the D line. But this was overall a wildly successful season. You had a 24-7 lead at halftime in the NFC Championship. That's going to haunt me for probably the rest of my existence. But this was the most fun football season of my life by far. And looking back at it now, as even though that was probably maybe the most heartbreaking loss of my sports watching career in the NFC title game, I can look back at it now and say this was just a phenomenal season. And there's nothing else to say about it. The Lions are going to be on top soon.
I completely agree. This was a wildly successful year for Detroit, one of the best ones we've seen in recent memory. To start off on offense, they had one of the best 1-2 punch backfields in the entire league with Gibbs and Monty. Monty, please come back to Chicago. We miss you. Jared Goff had a great year. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a phenomenal year. He produced like a top 5 wide receiver. Sam Laporta was great as a rookie, and I believe he set only one record, and it was for most receptions by a rookie tight end in a season. The O-line was top 3 in the entire league, even with a few injuries on the interior and on the tackle spots. I think Penei Sewell was bouncing around between the 2 tackle spots a little bit. Hutch was the main engine on that defense, especially pass rush wise, but it looked like he had basically no help on the defensive line at times. But like you mentioned before, adding DJ Reader and Marcus Davenport, having those guys on your team definitely helps. The secondary had a good amount of injuries throughout the year, but guys like Brian Branch, he was great. Cam Sutton, minus the stuff, he had some really solid plays as well. Kirby Joseph had a couple plays, and when CJ Gardner Johnson wasn't injured, he made a few impact plays and he really made his presence felt, especially in the playoffs. Dan Campbell was in the running for coach of the year, and the Lions made a great run to the NFC Championship game. Like you said, Josh, the team doesn't have many other holes, but I think if they add one more wide receiver to this offense, it can go from great to elite. If they stay healthy and they add a guy like Keon Coleman or Adonai Mitchell to fill that X spot, they could be a really scary unit for, I don't know, 4 or 5 more years, especially if Ben Johnson stays. I mean, I don't see him pulling a Washington Commanders type of stunt again, but I don't know. Maybe he just values loyalty and stays in Detroit for the rest of his career. I do expect him to leave either next year or the year after that, because I think all NFL coordinators or position coaches want a job at the top with control over their team. So Ben Johnson, he's one of the better OCs in the entire league. He proved it this year. The Lions were a couple just miscues away from really being in that Super Bowl and maybe even winning one. It would have been a great rematch between the Lions and the Chiefs from week 1 to bookend the season. But in the world of what ifs, maybe we can dream about that, but we are not living in that world. Lions, they got to climb that mountain again. They got to defend, like you said, Josh, the reigning defending. They got to defend the
Damn
NFC
right.
North, and the Packers, they're going to come for it. And who knows, maybe Caleb Williams and the Bears are going to come too. So, and I mean, Minnesota decides to, if Minnesota figures out the quarterback spot, or they just get better than average play with all the weapons they have, and their defense is just good again. Maybe they make a run at top 2, and maybe they make a wild card game interesting in like a 3 against 6 game, or a 2 against 7. But I do expect Detroit to probably win the division next year. They are the furthest ahead of all 4 teams in the NFC North, and pains me to say it, but the Bears got to go through the lines in order to be better than them. So
I just want to say real quick, because you mentioned Ben Johnson and the whole loyalty thing and not pulling the Washington stunt again. That is because the culture that the Lions have built, they haven't had culture like this ever, if not in a long time, if not ever. So that is the main thing that I should have said with this whole season and last
completely
season.
agree.
You built the culture, you built the standard, and now all the way from Sheila Ford Hamp down to the 53rd player on the roster, everybody is on the same page. They're locked in. They know what needs to be done. They know what it takes to win. And that's something that the Lions have never had. And now that they have it, I think that's what makes them more dangerous than ever.
I agree, but I also think he knows the Commanders suck and it's just not a good job for him.
That is what he did last year, too, though.
Yeah, but the Commanders just, I don't think they fit a Ben Johnson style yet at all. But
Fair.
I'm with Zach. I think this team should add a receiver in the draft, possibly. I think that'd be massive for them. That's kind of like the one hole you do see with all of the moves they made in free agency to help bolster their D line. They were 30 minutes away from a Super Bowl appearance. Unfortunately for them, the 49ers just kind of stole it from them. A couple miscues, like you said, the drops, that hurt. But overall, the season was a massive success for the Lions. The running game with Montgomery and Gibbs was as good as you would have wanted it to be. The rookie class was probably the best rookie class in the NFL. Brian Branch was phenomenal. Gibbs was phenomenal. Laporta was incredible. And Jack Campbell was pretty solid. Goff, he proved that he can be a little bit more than a game manager. Helped them win games. He finished games for them. Won them 2 playoff games, which is more than they have won in, like 20 years or whatever, more than that. They were hoping for a little bit more from their defense, but they were able to fix some of the holes they had this year in the offseason. Hutchinson, he is becoming an elite pass rusher in terms of pressures right in front of our eyes. He's very good at pressures. Amon-Ra was great, one of the best receivers. J-Mo started to have some moments late in the season. Hopefully he can continue to develop and get better and better for them. But so far in the offseason, they might have won the offseason last year with all the moves they made in the draft. And this year they're doing almost just as good in free agency. They got Carlton Davis with that trade, Amik Robertson. On the D line, they were able to add Marcus Davenport and the big addition of DJ Reader. But like you guys said, the most important move for them was to be able to keep Ben Johnson and run it back with this offense. They're going to be a scary team to play. Hopefully they don't just expect things to be given to them. They still have to go out and earn it. But I expect this Lions team to run it back and win the NFC North and possibly compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, just to wrap this up before we finish up here, I just wanted to quote a man who is heavily respected on this podcast by one person. They're going to take over the North, which they did, and they're never going to give it up, to quote Ryan Poles. But to finish off this pod, I want to say we are going to talk about the Final Four next week, as well as what else do you guys want to talk about next week?
We could do a mock draft.
Right. Yeah, we did say that. So we are planning on, as of right now, to talk about the Final Four and then do some sort of mock draft for the first round between all 3 of us, a little bit different than we did it last time. And then we will move forward with draft talk and free agency talk until we get into the NBA and NHL playoffs, which then we could speak about that. And then maybe we'll do like a baseball preview in like August or something. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, until next time, hit all the links in the description. Follow us on Spotify, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff. And we will see everybody in the next one.